Periphery has a new record out, and as they're my favorite band, of course I have some thoughts on it. I may be a bit late to the party for Periphery's music, but they've been a massive positive influence on my life to be following, so I'm always happy when they have new music out. Let's take a look at A Pale White Dot, song by song. Like my Parasomnia review, this will be compounded by my live reaction as I was listening to the album for the first time. I'll have a more general review of the album once we get through all the songs, but for now, here's a few thoughts on the songs themselves. Obsession. Oh! Alright, this is where we're going. Ooh, good pinch. Spencer's vocals are so good this time. As an opener, Obsession does a pretty good job of setting the tone for what the album is going to be. A Pale White Dot overall leans quite heavily on synth elements, contrasted against some of the much more aggressive elements that are showcased in the sudden explosion of black metal in the opener. That contrast of the soft synth parts against blast beats and heavily treble-picked chords can feel a little jarring and definitely was not where I was expecting it to go, but I wouldn't consider it unpleasant. The guitar work, which is one of the things I usually come to Periphery's music for, is a little understated, but it supports Spencer's incredible vocals very well. From the outset, Spencer's lower register is much fuller than it's been on previous albums. His voice seems to be sitting more in his chest as opposed to being pushed up towards his nose like he usually did on past albums. Overall, as an opener, Obsession sets up the tone very well, though it was a vast departure from what I was expecting it to be. On to the next one. Talk. Talk time. Ooh, interesting. I think Jake used this for a GGD demo. Yes. Spencer's vocals are so good this time around. Not that they're ever bad, but like, come on. Something a bit more traditional in terms of Periphery's output. Finally hearing the Gent A tuning again for the first time since P4 in 2019. This track is a bit more in line with the general vibe of your normal Periphery song, if a little bit more understated. Spencer's vocals are definitely starting to feel like more of a focal point of this album by the time you get to this song. Given the concept that A Pale White Dot is strung along with, it makes sense that the vocals and lyrics would take the forefront of the album over the rest of the elements you might come to a Periphery record for. And when they're trying to simplify and streamline their writing, this is definitely one of the consequences. Not that there's anything wrong with the more vocal-friendly writing, mind you, it's just something you start to notice at this point when you listen to this album after any other given Periphery record. Still, overall, Talk is a bit more traditionally Periphery, but nothing too special overall. Moving onward. Mr. God. Okay. It's not a sequence to record thing, but I'm here for it. I love how concise this one is. I always have. It's so good. Nolly's mixing also on point, as usual. Of course, the first single here. This one definitely strikes me as a showcase of how much Periphery's writing for this album is much more simplified and shorter compared to previous albums. And I think that's actually a good thing for them in this case. It allows them to be more deliberate with their writing as opposed to adding things for the sake of adding them, which often felt like what they do on other albums. And this is of course the first song we're hearing the 30-inch baritone guitars on, and I think this song as the first showcase of the guitars is really cool, if a little boring. The writing isn't that awfully interesting rhythm section-wise, but again, the vocals are taking almost all the focus this time around, and Mr. God is the first time that we as the audience got to learn that. Still, nothing wrong with it, I just think this song is a little boring. And therein will lie my biggest issue with this album, but we'll get to that shortly. On to the next one. Heaven on High. That's right. This was the song that they used to show off the vinyls, okay. Ooh, tasty. I'm inclined to believe Jake. Doesn't matter how well they telegraph it, it's so fucking heavy, it's good. This is by far the biggest earworm of the album for me. I love the hook in the chorus, so much so that even despite it usually being the only song from this album that gets stuck in my head, I don't mind it quite so much. This is also a showcase of Spencer's range as a vocalist too. His timbre is really all over the place, but in a really good and compelling way. I don't really think the guitar work is that interesting though. It's not bad and supports Spencer's vocals very well, but it also just isn't that memorable. Not even the breakdown is that memorable to me anyway. Undoubtedly there are a lot of cool parts, but Spencer's vocals take enough of a forefront for this album that I don't really notice what the guitars are doing. and that is felt at its worst when we get to the next song, Unlocking. There's the Periphery I know. By the way, sorry about the flickering in the webcam, it just does that for some reason. Spencer's vocals! It's a very different timbre here, I like it. It's less bright and present in a good way. This track is where I will actually highlight my biggest issue with A Pale White Dot. I have no idea what Unlocking is about, but given the lyrical content, it's probably about acknowledging who you are as a person and finding peace with exploring it. However, I do not think the vocal hook in this song is that good at all. One of my least favorite things that lyricists do is close out a line by repeating the last couple words of it. To me, that feels lazy lyrically, and it feels super hokey musically. And what's worse for me is that while the rhythm section does try to lift up that hook, I don't think there was really anything worth lifting up with it, especially when Spencer's range skyrockets in the last chorus of the song. The breakdown before the bridge is sick as hell, but I really wish that lyrically there was something else written as the chorus. It doesn't really feel like it earned it in the big outro chorus to me. So herein lies my biggest issue with this album. While I think that Periphery simplifying their writing and scoring the album to try and theme each song to the lyrical content is great, there is a point where it goes a little bit too far the other way. The guitar work takes a bit too much of a backseat for me, not only because I am a guitarist and love hearing the riffs Periphery writes, but also because I think it made a lot of the songs on A Pale White Dot a little bit boring, frankly, which to me is a bit of a letdown. There are a lot of cool vocal parts, and Spencer really outdid himself this time around, but I don't think the guitar work supplements it as well as it should. Unlocking kind of falls short by also having a mediocre vocal hook, which to me highlights a lot of the problems with their approach this time around. Either way, let's move on. Subhuman. Yes! So far it's all, I think, been Spencer. Okay, this is definitely not. Yeah. Okay, I see. They sort of split it. I like it. Okay, that's where we're at, tempo-wise. Never mind. Is this when we get Will Ramos? Is this when it actually happening? First guest feature on a Periphery song since, I guess, Reptile with Mikey Goodman, but having Will Ramos on the song was fucking sick. It's so apparent when his verse comes in, which I was a tiny bit worried about going in, but they differentiated Spencer and Will very well. Breaking out the 8-string this time, and this again feels a lot more traditionally Periphery. This sort of has a mix of Four Lights and Zagreus to me, but in a newer and fresh way. Very Meshuggah in its writing, which is also pretty cool. It's a lot like Periphery in that sense, as Periphery was founded upon copying Meshuggah. I don't really have a lot to say about this song. It's a cool heavy uplift to contrast against the otherwise disappointing Unlocking. On to the next one. Blackwall. Hell yeah. Oh, that's a total whiplash. I'm here for it though. This is fun. Heavy Lorna Shore shit to some nice synthwave. Spencer's voice sounds different in a good way. I just realized I have this just out of shot. There we go. Let's make it fit if I ever release this in full. It's just the Jake Bowen feature right now for his electronic stuff. Get some 4 seconds ago going. I don't care what anyone says, Periphery's electronic features are sick as fuck. That said, as cool as this one is, I don't think I've heard a 4-minute song say so little since I listened to Sleep Token. The entire lyric page can fit onto one screen without having to scroll, which can't be said about any of the other songs. This is one of very few times where the instrumental picks up some of the slack for this album. Undoubtedly, I love Spencer's voice on this song. It's very soft contrast against the heavy electronic elements going on around his singing, which I think is really neat. My problem is that the song doesn't really say anything, or at least I don't think it does. I'd be interested to hear the specific meaning behind this song. I didn't get to go to one of the Guitar Center listening parties, so I can't really say much about what this song is trying to say. In all honesty, this just feels like a 4 seconds ago song, not a Periphery song. Their other electronic features are more Periphery in feel, but I do still quite like Blackwall. Apart from all my criticisms, this song is a real vibe and a nice palate cleanser after Subhuman and before Malevolent. Speaking of which, Malevolent! Yes! I like this one a lot. This one's great. This song almost feels like it's out of Clair Obscur, Expedition 33. If you were looking for your token Mark Holcomb song, this is where you'd find it. Out of every track on A Pale White Dot, this is the most traditionally Periphery song, I think. The main riff is sick as hell, and the chorus is mysterious and haunting in exactly all the most satisfying ways. The thrashy verse was also a nice touch, and makes me wonder if this song was originally a Haunted Shores song, but who am I to say for sure? With this being more traditionally Periphery, the guitars feel like they supplement Spencer's vocals the best here. The one thing I will say is I think the backing vocals that say the voices echo from below or whatever are a little too loud and repeat too many times. Could do with some lyrical variation there, but I think this is my favorite on the album, or at least it's one of my favorites. Not because it's more in line with what I expect from Periphery, but I'm just more regularly wowed by it than the other songs. That said, on to the next one. Carry On. Getting 8th string. I love the back and forth, it's so fun. Okay, I do want to pause here. That one hit me more than I expected it to. Yeah, this that's a little. Oh, that one got me in the heart. That one really did. Yeah. I want to know who wrote the lyrics on this one, because this was mostly vocals. Apparently it was Spencer. Taking after my heart there, buddy. Really got me close to the heart in that one. That was... Like, this was one of those cases where, like, I was listening to it and I'm like, huh, this is actually pretty fun. And I started reading the lyrics, like, properly, and was like, because I have them on my lower monitor here. I started reading the lyrics properly and I'm like, fuck, I'm not going to rehash the reasons why that hits close to home, but god damn. Oh, that deserves a thumbs up. It really does. Let's continue. So, I didn't expect to be as hit by this song as I was. Even listening to it again to write this part of the review, I just stopped and listened to the song, and the lyrics especially were what struck me. From what I understand is that this song is about one of Spencer's lowest points in his life, and I kind of want to know what that story is, because clearly this song connected to me as well. If you've watched my Undertale video essay, you'll understand why that is. The back and forth of the heavy, genty riffs and the softer parts, and even into the outro chorus, I think reveal why I was so underwhelmed by some of the other songs, simply because I could connect with what was being said on Carry On. I'm not saying I couldn't with the other songs, it's just that the language that was used to write the lyrics on the songs about heavier topics is vague enough that I could do with hearing from the band what each song is about individually. I'll put it this way. I've never had to stop and catch my breath emotionally before continuing to listen to an album before. Carry On really captured my heart, that's all there is to it. On to the next one. Neon Valley. Yes, give me that. It's a toss-up between this song, Carry On, and Malevolent for my favorite song on this album, but something about Neon Valley and the however long it's been since I listened to this album for the first time just really strikes me. Some of it does have to do with Spencer's vocals, as I commented here, but I think in that particular case it really comes down to the vocal timbre he used for the last few lines of that verse. He sounds a hell of a lot like Chester Bennington actually with those lines, which I had initially thought was what this song was related to. However, it was at this point in writing that I found a Reddit post which detailed the meanings of all the songs. That being said, this doesn't really change anything about my criticisms, only frames them differently. I'll talk more about that when I give a general review of the album, but as it relates to Neon Valley, the specific meaning written on the post says this song is about a depressed man who drives to LA and accidentally joins a ritualistic death cult. That I think is a very interesting lyrical concept, but could also be read into more metaphorically as the musicians and bands who move to LA after signing with a record label and not realizing what they've given up in doing so. Think of it like this. A prophet in disguise could be the label A&R. In a world so bleak you've discarded me could be the sudden and soulless direction the music goes as a result of the label deal, among a few other loose connections I could make. Purely coincidental connections because of the fact there is a public official meaning behind this song, but I do think it's interesting. Once again, I don't think the guitar work is that awfully interesting on this song. There's just a lot of really incredible Spencer lines and this amazing synth line after the breakdown, which I just love so much. I don't have a lot else to say about this song, but I think it is just really good. On to the next one. Everyone Dies Alone. I'm not supposed to do this, but I'm turning up the speakers. This song I tear up at most readily. Given what this song is supposedly about in its impetus, I find this song to be absolutely the most striking. It's at least linked to Mark Holcomb's father who passed away in the lead up to making this album, but in a more general sense is about grief and mortality. Just about anyone can relate to that, and this is one of the reasons I love metal music as a whole. While it's possible to find examples of similar subject matter in music outside of metal, it's incredibly rare. Metal isn't afraid to explore these kinds of difficult emotional topics as a way to process them. I've often said that metal is angry so I don't have to be, and I know I'm not alone in that interpretation. Everyone Dies Alone, among many others, is a good example of exactly what I mean. I know I've personally found some peace in the idea of death because of metal, and it's helped me with a lot of very low points in my life. Hell, the whole reason I'm a Dream Theater fan is because of my severe depression and anxiety. Everyone Dies Alone is another one of those songs that I really felt a strong connection to upon hearing it for the first time. I mean, I'm always going to be fond of a song written in B-flat minor that uses the flat 6 regularly, so I was already in love with it from the first note. But just reading the lyrics, you can feel the pain behind them, even as generalized as they are compared to the main inspiration for the song. Once again, though, I'm not that impressed by the guitar work. I think oddly enough at this point I can sort of forgive it. On other songs I was a little bit harsher, but I do have to keep reminding myself that this album isn't designed to be a technical showcase, but rather a way to process some rather heavy emotions and events. I can't fault it for that, and that's why I've been able to forgive its shortcomings musically for the most part. With that, let's get on to the last song, A Pale White Dot. So the actual track, A Pale White Dot, is instrumental, apparently. Me when I'm Mark Holcomb. I like it. I think that's a good way to cap it off. Yeah, so I think just initial post thoughts would be important, which is something I didn't do at the end of the Dream Theater one from last year. I wasn't expecting Carry On to get me as much as it did. Like that one really has stuck with me. Like all this music's great. Like I fucking love this. This entire album. Like if we're gonna talk about, I still need like a month to fully decide how I feel about it. But if right now, off the grill, if we're talking about Periphery albums that are my favorite Periphery albums, this is it. This is it. This beats Periphery 4, like very, very highly. There's a lot of heavy stuff, a lot of light stuff, just enough to keep me engaged for the full 47 minutes that this album was. It was a perfect ride from start to end. And given what it's about and my personal familiarity with loneliness, as this album's theme has been, this one hits close to home, to say the least. And Carry On especially, because that very accurately describes being depressed and feeling super lonely and just lying in bed. But that ironically not being the solution to you feeling super lonely and wanting to not be lonely. It just leads to you sulking. Like that's kind of what Carry On is, or at least that's how I interpreted it just from the listening here. Fuck, this is such a good album. This is such a good album, and I think Periphery have managed to find a way to outdo themselves again, so well done, lads. This was a wonderful trip from start to end, and very well worth the surprise announcement that this was coming. If this marks the end of the Periphery number subtitle albums, I will not be upset about that as long as they do what it is that they want to do. Because it'll always lead to making fucking great music. So, the song is interpreted as acceptance of what you've been through and pushing forward instead of ruminating. and I think having Mark play one of his more signature styles on an acoustic guitar was a really good way to do that. There isn't much to this song, it's 3 or 4 sections and then it's done, but this to me feels like a more optimistic look back at the content of the album on the whole. Again, the acceptance thing, but also like, these are all realities that we or someone has dealt with, and while you can't change them, you can always push forward to find happiness again. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. And ending it like it was recorded off an old cassette tape I think is a nice extra touch, as if the album is being played in a vacant room on a cassette player and we've just zoomed out to see the room again finally. It pulls you back out of the experience and immersion in just the right way. I'm imparting a lot more onto an instrumental song than I am some of the songs with lyrics, I'm aware, but when it's an instrumental song, you're kind of allowed to make your own assumptions. As an album closer, I think this is perfect. Aside from my odd imparted meanings, I don't have much else to say, so let's move on to my more general thoughts. On the whole, A Pale White Dot is a wonderful album from beginning to end. It's come out just as I was starting to get bored of their albums up to P5 and wanted something new, and they really delivered. My only real criticism of the album is just that the guitar work is a bit more boring than I would have wanted for a Periphery album. Not to say that the use of the 30-inch baritones is an unwelcome change, it's just that the songs that use it, especially Mr. God, don't really feel like they're doing anything that interesting with the stupid low range they had access to, or the contrast of stupid low notes and high melodic parts like Periphery has done before. There's definitely more exploration to be done with the baritones, that's for sure. Aside from that, the production was huge, and the drums especially were on point. Nolly really outdid himself on the engineering there and the mixing in general, and having to play a bass in unison with the guitars had to have been really tricky to mix, but he managed to pull it off. The real standout this time around though was Spencer Sotelo. His vocals were absolutely on point this time around. Not that they weren't before, but he explored a lot more different timbres than he's ever really done before and really started to show how broad his range could truly be. Not just in terms of pitch, but how he sings the notes. Now, I would like to quickly address the fact that I left my reviews of each track intact despite having found the Reddit post. Apart from it being an AI summary that had some incorrect and nonsensical information, it still didn't change much of what I had to say about the songs. Unlocking is the worst offender of this, as I think it's my least favorite on the album overall, and probably my least favorite Periphery song too. It really was the place where I think a lot of the shortcomings of how they approached this album came out. I love them simplifying their writing, but it made some of the songs, or at least parts of them, really forgettable and feel really uninspired. Undoubtedly, all of these songs have their hooks and earworms, not even just in terms of the vocals. I can pinpoint each song based off guitar riffs, but I just think there are a lot of parts that could have been improved upon in some way. The chorus of Unlocking, obviously, but also things like the guitar work in Heaven on High, the general nothingness of Blackwall, and the boring monotony of Mr. God. There are some striking images and themes in each song, but at various points I don't really feel them. All in all, this is a very solid album from Periphery. I've listened to it a lot in the lead up to making this review, and it's been a backing track for a lot of mental breakdowns I've been having over the last couple months. It helps me know I'm not truly alone, even despite its flaws. With all that said, thank you for this incredible album, Periphery. I look forward to seeing you on your tour in November.